Good morning, everyone. Remember the other week when I reported about Elections Canada planning to pay influencers? And I thought it was kind of a weird thing to do when on the one side you're saying, oh no, social media is going to play a huge part in Canada's elections and we've got to regulate those social media companies like YouTube and Facebook, etc., and Twitter, etc., etc. And then on the other hand, you're paying influencers to influence your election, to get the youth vote out. I thought that was a contradiction in policy, and that's not. The Liberals are no strangers to doing that. They have a lot of contradictions in policy. If the number one issue is reducing CO2, why are we wholesale importing people from low CO2 countries? That seems like a strange contradiction to me, but I'm not in charge, I suppose. But this one was really, really obvious, and the Conservatives took issue with it, and it seems like they're backing off, except I don't think they are, because they paid these people. We'll see in just a second. Yeah, these people got paid. So totally, it's not going to happen. We're not doing that, but they're just going to have their own videos made that are totally independent, and we paid them. Of course we paid them. We had an agreement. City TV or City News is reporting. Elections Canada scraps social media influencers to encourage youth vote. Elections Canada has scrapped plans to use social media influencers to persuade young Canadians to register to vote in this fall's federal election. Chief Electoral Officer Stéphane Perreault said Thursday that the final vetting of 13 people chosen for the campaign, athletes, YouTubers, and other television and social media celebrities, turned up some past activities that could be seen as partisan. Quote, I did not feel that I had the right assurances that were necessary to protect our reputation as an unimpeachable, neutral, and non-partisan agency for the election, Perreault said in an interview. It would have been a risk and a distraction at a point where the focus should be on the voters, on the candidates, on the campaigns, on the platforms. Perreault's decision to scrap the influencers campaign comes from a sustained criticism of the idea from Conservative MPs who allege it was evidence of bias on the part of Elections Canada. They doubted the influencers would be truly nonpartisan and charged that any increase in youth voter turnout would largely benefit the Liberals. Ottawa Conservative MP Pierre Poilievre went so far as to call the independent agency a Liberal lapdog. He is fiery in the House, isn't he? I scroll down a bit. Among those who were supposed to take part in a video encouraging youth to register were Olympic athletes Andre Degas, sorry if I've got any of these wrong, by the way, Penny O'Lexake, Max Parrott, YouTubers Mitch Hughes, Elle Mills, and Lily Singh. The others were comedian Catherine Levac, TV host Maripur Morin, Nicholas Ouellette, singer-songwriter Alex Nevsky, blogger Than Fung, actor and First Nations activist Ashley Calibel, and Mayan Ziv, a photographer and activist for disability issues. So those are the people, and I was interested about that, and that's interesting. And here's Elections Canada already paid social media influencers before scrapping the campaigns, Global News is reporting. Elections Canada has already paid social media influencers it planned to use to encourage voter registrations ahead of the fall election prior to canceling the campaign. A spokesperson for the agency confirmed to Global News that it already gave out at least some of the $650,000 set aside to get 13 influencers, musicians, athletes, and YouTubers, stars among them, to feature in a promotional campaign aimed at increasing voter registration. Now, this is interesting, isn't it? $650,000. That's a lot of money, isn't it? And who benefits from that money being spent? Is it just everybody benefits because more people vote? Well, as Mr. Poilievre pointed out in the last news article, the youth vote overwhelmingly supports the left, essentially, like NDP, Liberal, mainly Liberal, because that's all people on the left have known, really, for their adult, or not people on the left, young people on the left, right? If you're just turning 18, you've only started paying attention to politics in the last few years. So you know Justin Trudeau is the prime minister, right? And you know that Stephen Harper was bad, because that's what the newspapers say, and that's what Justin Trudeau says, right? So that's what you're aware of. And if you're politically astute, and trust me, if you've walked through the halls of any high school recently, being politically astute means orange man, Ford man, bad, right? Yeah, that's basically what. Yes, good little drones. Well done. You know politics. Go out into the world and pay some taxes. You're not going to become a teacher, are you? It's interesting, right? It's interesting, the indoctrination that goes on. And they don't know better because they've never been taught better, unless they are taught better at home or something to that effect. But if they're relying, them being the children, on being educated about politics in schools, it's going to have a very, very lefty bent, right? So anyway, $650,000 is a lot of money to continue the indoctrination with these popular Canadians, most of whom I've never heard of, most of whom I would have to look up how to say their name in order to say it correctly. So, right? It's a waste of money. Couldn't that money be spent on something else? And maybe in a nonpartisan way? Maybe in a way that doesn't benefit one party overwhelmingly over the others? Or one ideology overwhelmingly over others? That's just me. That's just my opinion. I wish that money was not allowed to be spent on electioneering in an election year before the writs dropped, right? Like that seems just poor. Anyway, back to the article. Yes, the influencers were paid, the agency said in response to a question from Global News asking, were any of the influencers already paid? Most of that money has been spent already. We are working on to recover some of it. Oh, great. That comes on the heels of the report by the Canadian Press Thursday afternoon that the independent agency is scrapping the plan to use the influencers over concerns that some have been involved in activities that could be deemed as partisan. The campaign will still take place, but will not include a social media influencer video. The 13 influencers that were set to feature in the video included blah, 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 blah. Okay, the Canadian Press reported that a similar video will still go forward, but will use the voice actors instead of the influencers. And I just avoided naming all the actors again because I already went through that. And so that's interesting, right? It's going to go forward anyway. Just, a video with cartoons instead of the influencers. Perfect. Wonderful. What a waste. What a waste of money. Okay, here's Justin Trudeau telling us that the press and freedom of the press is under attack. Under attack. Here we go, Justin Trudeau. And I know. It's like nails on a chalkboard, but here we go.
Recognize that the powerful throughout history, this is not a recent thing, have always tried to silence those who would challenge them, those who would criticize them. There have always been tensions between those who would speak truth to power and those who like having their power, thank you very much, and don't necessarily want to see it frittered away. And that is something that we've seen throughout the scope of human history. But we are now in a phase where that capacity to speak truth to power, that very capacity for a citizen to engage with truth is under attack. And not just by the powerful, but by those who would see our institutions themselves weakened. Attacks on the media are not just about getting your preferred political candidate elected, for example. They're about increasing the level of cynicism that citizens have towards all authorities, towards all of the institutions that are there to protect us as citizens.
Like embassies? Would you class that like an embassy? Because this happened yesterday, and man, this is a big deal. And I don't think it's going to be reported. I haven't checked, but I don't think it's going to be reported. Not nearly as much as it should. Sorry for the pause face there, Keenan. But this is incredible. Keenan Bext, I think that's how you say his name, is a reporter for the Rebel Media. He was in Washington yesterday. Justin Trudeau was in Washington yesterday meeting with Donald Trump for a bilateral trade negotiation talk, whatever it was. And they had a lovely picture that was memed and quite funny. And well, this happened. This is incredible. He's tweeting, quote, "I'm outraged. A Trudeau staffer just kicked me out of my own embassy. The Apartic said that the PMO and the Canadian Press Gallery decided together that I wasn't allowed in. I just left the White House for heck's sakes to cover Trudeau's press conference on Canadian soil." And here's Keenan.
I am beyond furious right now. I just left the White House, the briefing room, after I was treated very courteously by the Donald Trump administration. I came to the Canadian embassy, my own embassy, to cover my own prime minister, and the doors were closed on me. A Prime Minister's office staffer came out and told me that they decided with the Canadian Press Gallery that I was not allowed to cover the Prime Minister. They determined which media was and was not allowed in their own embassy. It's disgusting. I'm going to try not to use expletives right now because of how furious I am. You know, it's true. There's two kinds of media in Canada right now. Media that's subsidized by Justin Trudeau and media that is banned by Justin Trudeau. It's despicable. The full video is going to come up as soon as I can send it to Toronto and get it put on YouTube. It's absolutely a disgrace. The Prime Minister's office is a disgrace. The press gallery is a disgrace. Frankly, they need to be scrapped. but so does this Prime Minister's office.
And I'll leave him there. The link is in the description. But it's pretty incredible that that's very true. The Prime Minister's office is subsidizing to the tune of $10 million a month newspapers in the country. And I want to be clear, I heard from somebody at Global News that television stations aren't a part of the subsidy, it's just newspapers. So I wasn't aware of that, so I wanted to make that clear. But it's really, really, really difficult to understand how a prime minister who can talk about attacks on freedom of the press and attacks on, injecting cynicism and mistrust in organizations meant to help citizens can do something like that, like prevent a Canadian citizen from wanting to cover in good faith a prime minister. You can say maybe the Rebel, they're bad people, those people at the Rebel. Fine. They should be allowed to have their spin on it and say what they want to say. That's what freedom of expression means, guys. That's important. It's the cornerstone of being Canadian. And if you disagree, you have the right to disagree. And you can have a discord about that. You can talk about that. But you don't have a right to say you are not allowed to even have the information to form an opinion on, sir, because we're worried that you're going to say the wrong thing about it. We're worried that what you're going to say will not be able to be disproven by our truths. This is very concerning. This is draconian. This is the attack on press and free speech that somebody recently was warning us about, right? Concerning. Here is an interesting tweet stream that has to do with the Nxivm trial, and the cult leader was convicted. Like, yes, he did it according to the jury. So he's not an alleged cult leader. He is a cult leader, and there are ties to Canada with some pretty interesting access to information. I'm going to read these tweets. The link is in the description. I don't get into Nxivm because, man, like it is a beast. It touches everything from Hillary Clinton's State Department to Bronfman, and Bronfman is part of the board of directors for the Trudeau Foundation, et cetera, et cetera. The connections are really incredible. I've been working on, people tell me about long videos. I'm doing another long one right now. And I try and get them in under a certain time just because I feel like every minute over is burned goodwill. Like there's got to be a good reason for me to go over. And the Bronfman video would be a 45-minute video. It would be like a mini documentary just to get the basics down. And then I'd have things to say. Once we were all on the same page and understood all the connections, then we could talk about it. But I think that the first 45 minutes would just be this person's connected to this person through this, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, Nxivm is a mess. It is a Pandora's box, and it's being opened. And I think this is part of the plan, if you know what I'm talking about. Here it is. Keith, 45, was involved with Rainier for more than 20 years and was part of the litigation team that worked under Claire Bronfman. Per court records, Keith said she fled Nxivm last year with the help of state police investigators who brought her to a domestic violence shelter. Holy Hannah. Keith claimed top officials in Nxivm paid a Canadian investigative firm to sift the financial records of 6 federal judges and U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer, Democrat in New York. Chuck Schumer. You know that name. He's Chuck and Nancy, right? He's been having lots of meetings with Donald Trump. He's been trying to stop Donald Trump, right? He's part of the resistance, so say, right? Back to the Twitter stream. Quote, according to Keefe, Nxivm officials also used the Canadian firm to obtain financial information on Edgar Bronfman and other officials with the Jewish World Congress, which Bronfman headed from 1981 to 2007. If they can do this to Edgar Bronfman, if you don't know the name Bronfman, look it up. If they can do this to him, imagine what they can do to you. Imagine what they could do to you, right? Like, that's a powerful person who presumably has people around him to protect him, layers upon layers. If they can do that to him, what can they do to you? Back to the Twitter stream. According to federal court records, in March 2009, Canadian investigative firm Canna Probe Group sent an invoice to Bronfman for $10,000 for, quote, banking sweep services of Rick A. Ross, who said that he is a recognized expert in cults and who is being sued by Nxivm in U.S. District Court in New Jersey. Keith said she possessed the Canna Probe invoices and that the company was paid, quote, well over $1 million. Is this the Canadian version of Black Cube? And again, like these are rabbit holes upon rabbit holes upon rabbit holes if you start looking, and it's just interesting. Like I said, these videos would be massive. If you're interested in having a read, well, there's the Twitter link. It's interesting. The concerning stuff that's happening in our country, the concerning stuff that's happening in our embassies across the way when Canadian citizens are trying to cover the leader of the country and are barred from doing that because the leader of the country disagrees with his expression. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? And Canada elections, man, $650,000 would go a long way to helping my community with homelessness or drug addiction. I'm pretty sure that's more important than paying influencers, 13 of them, more than $500,000. Isn't it? Maybe that's just me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Check out thepeoplespartyofcanada.ca. And yeah. Oh, it's the weekend. It's Friday. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody.